I'm Sarina Fazan, taking a risk, making a difference, and changing the course of your life. Remarkable stories from people defying the odds. You're listening to On the Record.
Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. Are you one of the 34 million people that watched The Tiger King, the docuseries of Carol Baskin and Don Lewis and this whole drama? I would imagine you are. Joining me is Dave Duquette, financial advisor here in town. Dave, I want to congratulate you on being nominated for Creative Loafing's Best of the Bay.
Appreciate that.
Thank you for being here. Rohom Khonsari, we go way back. We've done a lot of stories together. He's a very prominent criminal defense attorney here in the Bay Area. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, Rohom Khonsari. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. Okay, so before we start delving into the case and what we're going to talk about, we're going to talk about this new lawsuit that was filed, and also these two series that Tiger King, the Netflix series is doing Tiger King 2. Discovery ID is also doing a series following up on this case. So I want you guys to weigh in, but if you could first just give us a little snapshot of who you each are.
Yeah, so financial advisor in the area, Dave Duquette, the president of Impact Medical Advisors. And yeah, huge fan of Tiger King. It was such a great show that kept up, gave us a lot of entertainment, certainly in the beginning of the lockdown.
Absolutely. And I wanted you here because I wanted to talk to you and give us advice about wills, since that will has been brought into question so much. So I wanted to get some advice.
Yeah, so I'm obviously not an attorney that does wills, but something I review for clients and make sure that they have it in place and make sure that connecting them to an attorney to get that stuff done.
Absolutely.
And we can see the importance of that.
Yes, certainly. And then Rohom, with you have weighed in on a lot of national cases in the past.
Rohom Khonsari. I am an attorney here in the area. I've been an attorney for 16 years, primarily practicing in criminal defense. We have worked on national media cases, 3 or 4 of them specifically.
Yes. So tell me first, though, both of you, what is your, David, you just said that you, and I'm sorry, guys, right before I taped this, I had a cafe con leche. Let me see, I had like 5 cups of coffee prior to that, so I'm all over the place. I apologize. But let me ask you, just as viewers, did you guys watch the show and what did you think of it?
I've watched a couple episodes. From a criminal defense attorney's perspective, the true crime documentaries that Netflix has put out, including Making of a Murderer, they're interesting, but after a couple episodes, I just stopped watching and just followed it through the media.
Okay, so before we get to Dave on that, why do you stop watching? Because it doesn't seem realistic to you, or they don't pursue the angles that you think that they should? Why is that?
It's kind of the sensationalism that comes from it. I think if there are shows that deal more with areas that aren't crime related, I tend to watch them more. But if it comes more to the criminal law realm, I'll probably shy away from it if it's sensationalized or if it's not as accurate as it should be.
And so do you feel that show was sensationalized?
Absolutely.
Okay, so what was it about the show that you felt was sensationalized? Everything, or just tell me in your words.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say the whole show, I think that's the design of the show, is for it to be sensationalized and for that to draw the viewers in. As it relates to the criminal aspects of it, with him being in custody and her being investigated for her husband's disappearance, that's what's trying to draw the viewers in.
Got it, but it drew you in, right, Dave Duquette?
I watched every episode. So it got me on every single one of them.
So you and Lindsay, right,
yeah,
your wife, okay, now how old are your kids again?
5 and 3.
So I take it that the 5 and 3-year-old, the adorable little ones, were not watching the Tiger
No, this
King.
was when they finally go to bed, which isn't the easiest thing in the world to get. When they went to bed, yeah, we turned that on and it sucked us in.
Okay, so talk about that though. Okay, how did it suck you guys in? Did you guys watch it all in a matter of a couple of days? And granted, this all did occur during that COVID time when we're all basically, we can't even leave our houses anyway. So how quickly did you watch the show?
We have a pretty busy life, so we couldn't binge watch and stay up till 2 a.m. and then work and run around with the kids. So I don't remember how long it took, but we definitely hit on every episode. And I remember all of the friends in the neighborhood just getting around every now and then and talking about how crazy it was. Okay. But it's definitely one of those shows that attracted us just because of the insanity that ensued.
So what's interesting though, and you and I talked about this, just prior to the coronavirus hitting us, and you took your kids there.
Yeah.
To Big Cat Rescue.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us.
I've been there. My wife and I used to go before the kids. We've probably been there maybe 4 times. And probably a month or two before COVID really took place and the show came out, we brought the kids there. It was just one of those things, random day. We were looking for something to do and brought both of the kids there and walked around. And, you know, everybody that works there is great. Well, I guess they're volunteers. They don't actually work there, but whatever they are, I enjoy the place.
And you probably learned that so much, right, that they were volunteers? Because I had no idea.
They get different shirts, I guess, for the years they've been there, which is interesting.
Yes, I thought that was so interesting as well. But so here it is right in your backyard, and we had no idea all this was going on. And as a journalist and as a criminal defense attorney, I mean, I had no idea about Don Lewis. I mean, I had heard here and there a little, you know, but I had no idea the depth of the case until I started to watch the show. And in all seriousness, in these past couple months, you know, I've really gotten to know the Don Lewis family and the daughters, you know, the 3 daughters, the ex-wife, and we certainly hope for closure for them and to be able to at least find out what happened to their loved one. For those who may not know, but I can't imagine you not knowing since everybody's been talking about, Don Lewis is the ex-husband of Carol Baskin, who of course owns Big Cat Rescue. Just recently, they filed a lawsuit. Rohom, can you talk about this lawsuit? It's very rare, isn't it?
It's really rare, and it got filed 2 weeks ago today, which is the date I was looking for. It's incredibly rare. It's more of a thing of the past. And I don't even know if the judge is going to allow this complaint to move forward. If I was defending Ms. Baskin, Ms. Bradshaw, or Mr. Farr, I would file a motion to dismiss and have a judge evaluate whether something like this can move forward. Because an interpretation of it could be that this is just a fishing expedition to get information to then potentially file a wrongful death lawsuit.
And so, I'm not a lawyer, but truly, when you said it was rare, I have never seen anything like that before. I mean, do you think a judge is even going to take it seriously?
I don't necessarily know. I haven't had the time to look into the lawsuit in detail, but what happens in law is oftentimes we want to get information. We want to get phone records. We want to get transcripts. We want to get documents from people that have that information, but we don't have the subpoena power of the court in order to do that because there's not a case pending. But in filing this lawsuit, I think they're trying to create the mechanism to subpoena the information, conduct depositions, and gather that information.
Do you think the case is 23 years old? Do you feel that there is the evidence out there to even gather at this point?
And that's why I'm leaning towards it being a fishing expedition, but at the same time, with the value that came from the will and the estate, if they gather the information, if there is information to gather, then it is grounds for an amazing wrongful death lawsuit against Ms. Baskin.
Well, speaking of the will, and Dave, and as you mentioned, you're not an attorney, but I did want your advice on this. A lot of people have been talking about the will, and there are accusations out there that the will may have been forged. If it was forged, and Carol Baskin clearly, you know, got a great amount from the will. And again, these are just allegations, and we're not pointing any fingers at anybody. But because so many people are talking about wills, what guidance could you give us, or is there guidance to give? I mean, should we be preparing ourselves?
Don't procrastinate, right? Like, there's so many people that come into our office, and when our job is just to ask questions, right? And we often find out that people have not completed their estate plan, right? And they might have several kids and they've never completed an estate plan, and that's dangerous for a multitude of different reasons. And then what we often find as well is maybe people are in their 50s and 60s, and they think they're okay because they completed an estate plan when their kids were, 3 and 4. And we found that there are people in their estate plan that they don't even talk to anymore, right?
Wow.
So trying to update that when major life changes happen is important to stay on that. But it's easy to put that, to the bottom of the to-do list.
How often then should we be planning our estate though? Do we need to touch base every 5 years? And I know it's extremely difficult. Like the last thing you want to think about is your demise and leaving your loved ones behind. Mm-hmm. But how often should we be reevaluating or taking a look?
So we typically recommend, obviously, getting with an attorney to ask that question, just discussing your life events and what has taken place. When we're speaking to our clients that already have it, we ask them how long it's been. Has it been longer than at least 5 years? Since you wrote that, is there any major life changes? And then introducing them to an attorney just to review that document to make sure that it still states what they want.
And are there certain things, and again, I know you're not an attorney, and Rohom, please feel free, to chime in here. Are there certain things that we're supposed to be taking into account? I mean, clearly our home, right, 401k. I mean, what else should we be taking a look at?
I think it just depends on the assets that you have. A lot of times, and we've gone over this with wills, a lot of times people will just give a blanket asset distribution, depending on whether you have children like Dave and I do, establishing it in a trust until they're typically 25, but Dave doesn't want his children to have money until they're about 40.
Exactly. They can get little drips along the way.
Let's talk about that too.
Leaving breadcrumbs along the way until they're, I don't know, my age right now.
I really made fun of Dave when he did that. But typically it's a blanket asset distribution, and then you say, I want 25% to go to this person, I want 25% to go to that person. We do wills sometimes that they're, I want grandma's necklace to go to so-and-so, and so it's itemized, but by and large, it's just a percentage of the total assets going to somebody.
Wow. And so with this particular case, too, as we've been talking about all these allegations of forging the will, how do we protect ourselves on that end? I mean, do you get it and here, even if they did get it notarized, these allegations are coming up. So what advice would you give on that?
It kind of goes to Dave's point. People come in for estate planning and they want the will drafted and they just want to sign it. And you need 2 witnesses, you need a notary. And oftentimes, for example, Dave and I work with some clients together, oftentimes they just want the document in their hand. And once they have the document in their hand, maybe they'll execute it, maybe they won't. But if they do execute it, they need to do it in front of 2 witnesses and with a notary there. Sometimes they'll go to somebody after the fact and say, hey, can you witness this? By and large, that's never going to be an issue, but if it is an issue like this case is, then those witnesses could potentially be brought in, as has happened here.
Wow. So, okay.
Really quick, and just because I forget the process at this point, with the witnesses, are you going through every page? Because in this case, if there was a forgery and there's just signatures there, or are the witnesses actually discussing what's going on inside of the document? Because if they're not, then could it still be forged and the witness really doesn't know whether or not there's a forgery in there or not, right? So
that's a good point.
I don't know how that would work.
So the witnesses aren't there for the content of the document. The witnesses are there. The 2 witnesses, the notary and the person signing the will, should all be in the same room at the same time. So the witnesses are there to witness that, yes, it is actually this person that is signing this document, which the notary is as well, but it's more of a safeguard that's in place. In fact, the notary should be checking the witnesses' IDs as well, not that they're swearing to anything, but that everyone in the room is who they are, and this person is actually signing the document, which has become a big deal in this case.
Yeah.
So some people, might think, gosh, what a hassle to get everybody together at the same time. But you guys are saying that you cannot view it that way. It's your life. It's your loved ones' lives, correct?
Well, typically what we do, because you can't have an interested party be a witness. So typically what we'll do is we'll bring
I see. Okay.
someone into the law firm.
Okay, can you explain that actually?
Sure.
Because, honestly, until I was talking to you right now, here's me thinking in my mind, oh my gosh, do I have to get someone else to come in? But please explain that.
Sure. So if the client doesn't want to come in to sign in our office, we still want the original to be sent to us. But if they come into the office, then we'll have the witnesses present. Obviously, the witnesses don't know the people that are coming in. They can be disinterested parties. One of us will notarize the document, and then it's executed from there.
Yeah. Or we'll set it up where, everybody comes to my office, and we'll grab people, some of the staff from our office to come in. So it's just...
And to witness it and
correct.
And to make sure. So, but you're saying, Dave, having a will in place is extremely, extremely important.
I mean, it's a piece of the puzzle, right? So it's just one of those things that, and it's one, I'm trying to create a client-facing checklist that's very simple to understand and saying, these are the things you just need to check off the list. In an estate plan, a will, power of attorney, healthcare policy, those things, once you check it off, obviously it needs to be updated with major life changes. But it's not this reoccurring payment that you constantly have to do, so it's not as complicated. You just actually have to do it. And oftentimes you need to have somebody that's going to hold you accountable to make sure it gets done.
And so oftentimes in life things happen, like a divorce or something. So especially if something like that happens, because clearly they are exes, you do have to go back in and reevaluate it, right?
Not only do you have to reevaluate the will, but then you have to go into, and you can speak more on this, but the accounts and the beneficiaries in each of those accounts, because you don't want there to be a discrepancy or a conflict between a beneficiary that's listed, say, on a life insurance policy, and then what's listed in the will.
Yeah, so beneficiary changes are incredibly important during an event like that. And just reviews of beneficiaries in general, every several years, just to make sure that it's still who you want.
And Rohom, when you were talking about, and you want your grandmother's necklace to go to this person, or your Chanel bag, if you have one, going to so and so, is that okay for people to do that if you want to be that specific?
Sure, there's no problem with that. It's obviously it takes us more time and more cost, but absolutely, I've had plenty of wills where I just did one, unfortunately for a client that's in stage 4 of cancer, but she listed out probably 17 different items and maybe 20 other accounts that she wanted to go, I want this to go to this grandchild, I want this to go to this grandchild. And it's not, you can absolutely do it, it's just a little bit more time intensive.
So, and if you have an attorney and a financial advisor that you trust, of course, they can help you walk through the process. So what questions should we be asking when we try to seek out that attorney, or someone who's putting together our will?
I think oftentimes when it comes to wills and attorneys, a lot of it is word of mouth based. I don't necessarily know what the market is to essentially Google an attorney as it comes to wills. There are attorneys, for example, if there's a living trust that needs to be established or it's a lot more complicated, there are attorneys that I will then send that particular client to. But to answer the question as to how someone would go about doing that, I don't know from that perspective.
How about you, Dave?
Are you saying what questions they need to understand?
Yes, yes.
Oh,
So
I thought it was how do you go about finding an attorney?
Yeah. So I think often what we find is, or at least some checklists that we've worked with some attorneys to develop, who's going to take care of the kids if the worst case scenario happens. Like you said, this isn't things that people love discussing, right? So, who would take care of the kids? Who would be the trustee? And questions like that, right? Who would control the money? And there's some technical stuff in there that you want to prepare before just sitting down, or at least when you sit down with the attorney, you're going to likely have to go back and have some discussions as a family to figure out exactly how you want to establish it.
So that's good homework. And you're right, I did ask you that question, but this is a great question to answer. So there is some homework that we should be doing at home. And again, it's not what we like to do and like to discuss.
It's easy to procrastinate on stuff like that.
But great questions like who's going to take care of the kids just in case, who's the trustee, the money. What else? Are there some other questions?
Well, I would say one of the things that I know we've discussed as well is when you're thinking about who would take care of the kids, oftentimes people are thinking of their parents, right? Because they know,
Your
they've
parent,
done a
of
great
course.
job, right?
Mhm.
So continuing, just to pass on, but you got to think of age, right? So I know my parents would be exhausted if they had to run after my kids all the time, right? And they had to do that for years and years and years. My kids are only 3 and 5, so there'd be a lot on my parents, right, at that age. So you got to consider things like that. Choosing, we've discussed this in the past too, choosing one person in a relationship, just in case there is a divorce. Like, is there really one person you want in that relationship to be the person that would watch the kids, or is it really both of them? Because if there is a divorce, then I don't know if it could be a custody battle in that case, but I'm assuming
It would go to the surviving parent.
Okay.
Wow.
So for example, and not to inject a personal element into this, but if me and my ex-wife were both to die in the same event, Dave and his wife would take care of our 2 children as it is listed in our will.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I think it's Lindsay is listed solely, or is it me too?
Well, in mine, it's you too.
Okay, so it's me too.
Wow.
Okay,
So, you know
so
what?
I'm-
Actually, I didn't know that you guys had such a personal connection.
We do. Yeah.
Really? Okay, how did this personal connection develop? Here, so this is crazy. I wanted to discuss, I called up Dave and I said, hey Dave, I want to talk to you about, I think more and more people are talking about their wills and planning. And then I said, by chance, do you know Rohom Khonsari? He just reached out to me. He said that he knows you, and I've worked with him on numerous national cases. So I didn't realize that you guys were that close of friends.
Yeah.
This is fantastic. How do you guys know each other?
Well, my ex-wife works with Dave's wife. So
With Lindsay.
They're with Lindsay. They're continuing to work together. So that's where our relationship came from.
Yeah.
And isn't it something though about connections? Because now you guys also work together, right? Like you maybe consult each other back and forth, or but not for this podcast to go all over the place. But it just goes to show oftentimes it's who you know, and you never know where that relationship could lead. Wow, but Dave, I had no idea that you would be taking care of
Yeah. So
Rohom's kids.
we're gonna double the kids, so you guys better be safe.
But you did bring up a really, really great point, because, and I do have to update my will, but that is because so oftentimes you do think, of course, my parents are going to take care of the kids, but you have to think about the age because they are older, and that is a tough decision to make, though. But
It's not easy.
So speaking of things, though, do you feel? I feel more people are talking about wills and what to do about their wills because of this whole docuseries phenomenon. Have you guys found that?
I've seen it simply with COVID. I've seen a lot of teachers actually recently being able to, or thinking about this now because they're having to go back to school. They're not really sure what this is going to look like, or of course we're in this, kind of odd place where are we going to see a second wave, or what does that look like as well? So a lot of teachers are reaching out and trying to get this stuff in place. Life insurance and estate planning, because all of a sudden they didn't have it. Now this is being talked about much more. Really nothing to do with the Tiger King situation, I don't think. More the COVID and, obviously people passing. So.
Wow, that's so interesting. Have you seen anything? Have you seen an uptick by any chance, Rohom?
More along the lines of what Dave was saying as it relates to COVID. I mean, this is a topic that does come up when I think I've brought it up when it comes to having witnesses there and getting a signature, especially during COVID, because we dealt with a medical professional in the emergency room that did not, one of Dave and my clients, that didn't necessarily want to come to the office to expose us and for her exposure. So I just made sure that she had the sufficient witnesses and the notary there with her when she executed it and to get us the document.
Fascinating. I mean, I guess very interesting, and just great advice from the two of you. On as we wrap this up, what do you think though about the case? I mean, do you think it will ever get solved?
I think from a media perspective and also a criminal law perspective, I have no idea why she agreed to do this show. And that's something that I've thought about a lot as I've seen this show develop. She basically, if and again, these are allegations. There's
right.
no
And
truth
we're talking
to
about
them.
Carol Baskin.
We're talking about Carol Baskin. But if this was something that came out back in 97 and prolonged past that point to the point where in 2011, law enforcement was still asking her to take a polygraph. So this isn't something that is 20 years old that hasn't come up yet. But if you know this has continued over time, why are you agreeing to a show that is going to expose this to the public and then have people asking questions and presenting theories, which then motivates law enforcement to open the case back up?
Absolutely, that's a very good point. She's claimed in interviews that she had no idea that the show would take this angle. But you're saying, as a criminal defense attorney, you shouldn't have spoken at all if there's an active investigation.
I have absolutely no idea how she would have thought that this wasn't going to come up. This business was a business that she had with Don Lewis. So unless they were just going to laser focus on the present and not talk about what had happened before, which I don't know how they could with the allegations of hiring a hitman to murder her, this was whether she committed the crime or not, and that's
to be seen.
Left up to someone else. She drew that attention upon herself in agreeing to do the show.
So, will you, I know you said you only watched 2 or 3 episodes, but as Tiger King 2 comes out and the Discovery ID shows more about the investigation, will you be more interested in watching?
I think I'll be more interested in watching the Discovery ID perspective and also in following the case now that the sheriff has reopened it. So maybe less the show and more what's happening with the investigation itself.
Spoken as a true criminal defense attorney. And so now, David Duquette, you and Lindsay, what are you guys planning for, like Tiger King 2, Discovery ID?
I'm sure I'll get sucked into it. I mean, I started watching the interviews that David Spade was doing with the cast after this. I think it was on YouTube or something, and that was, funny in and of itself. I don't know. Maybe this was just a COVID thing in the beginning of it, or is Joe Exotic going to be a part of this one too?
So, as part of Discovery ID, Joe Exotic is going to be interviewed from behind bars.
Okay, so he's a pretty big attraction right there. I mean, that guy is interesting to watch on TV. So, I'm sure I'll get sucked into it.
I'll come over to your house.
Yeah, we'll grab a couple of drinks and enjoy it, right?
There you go. So to give you guys both a plug, thank you again so much for being here. But how can people who are watching this find you?
Go ahead.
So website is impactmedicaladvisors.com. I'm a financial advisor in the area, and all my information's on there if you have any questions.
And Rohom Khonsari, klgflorida.com. We not only do criminal defense, but we do other areas of law, including family and business.
Thank you so much, guys. Well, I'm a fan. So thank you so much for watching. And you can follow me on, all my social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. What am I forgetting? I mean, there's everything, right? But anyway, as always, thanks so much for watching. Material discussed is meant for general informational purposes only and is not to be construed as tax, legal, or investment advice. Although the information has been gathered from sources believed to be reliable, please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information should be relied upon only when coordinated with individual professional advice. David is a registered representative and financial advisor of Park Avenue Securities, LLC, PAS. Securities product and advisory services offered through PAS, member FINRA, SIPC, financial representative of the Guardian Life Insurance Company of America, Guardian, New York, New York. PAS is a direct, wholly owned subsidiary of Guardian. Impact Medical Advisors is not an affiliate or subsidiary of PAS or Guardian. California Insurance License number 09J44650, 2020 105290, expiration 7/22. This podcast is brought to you by Autism Shifts.
Kind of used to seeing autism through, the lens of its challenges, everything that's hard about it. And what we've been able to do through our program, and me as a mom, I've been able to shift that perspective and start looking at the whole diagnosis differently. And when I do, I can see the capabilities, I can see the possibilities for our community. And really, that's the opportunity we have, is to help people within our community see that.
For more information, visit autismshifts.org.